Thank you guys for being here. Welcome to Beyond the Letter. Man, we got our brothers here. It's been quite some. Have we done one with all four of us?
No.
Not with all four.
Oh,
Yeah.
so it was Julian with us one time?
I was
we
on
had
with
another
Julian.
brother?
Julian.
Julian
was here.
I'm trying to think of it. Yeah. It's like we had a my other regular brother.
We did the last one we did was Sean.
Oh,
that's right.
No way. That was the last one, huh?
Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, well, welcome everybody to Beyond the Letter. We got Will in the house. We got Sammy Rod in the house. And we got Jeff T.
What up?
Osborne in the house. Man, how are you guys liking the podcast game right now? Let me premise that question, okay? Because this is why I want to go with it. I'm not trying to go anywhere. What I'm saying is here's where the question's coming from.
The new podcast coming out?
No, well, I
Okay,
do have
yeah.
one coming out in September.
Hallelujah.
Nobody knows about. I'll tell you guys after. But yeah, we'll drop one more once a week in September. You're on a podcast. you got on a podcast. You're on a few, but you're on a podcast.
Yeah.
Will, you're always now getting podcast requests.
That's a
Always,
viral
always.
king, bro.
He is.
I'm on this podcast, and I'll do a few every now and then.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
not regularly, but like
Yeah.
you doing Tim Ross
I
in a
am.
couple months on the basement, and it's huge.
Mr. Ross.
That's big. And then Sammy's everywhere. Sammy knows every pastor, every
I'm jumping in with the Asian Mafia.
Oh, you going to good service?
Yeah.
That's our boys.
Yeah,
See?
next.
Kevin
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna be on good service next.
I'll be there next month.
They
Sometime.
doing real good.
Yeah.
Love
So
them,
proud of
dude.
them.
Yeah,
So
legends.
proud of them.
Theirs is dope. They handle it well. They host well. They got a great concept, food, conversation. They ask great questions that I feel like only guys in their element, like they're
Yeah.
not really in ministry, but they're doing ministry in that sense of full-time ministry. So they got you in trouble. They got me in trouble. So
Oh,
I
really?
like the
I'm
questions.
always-
I didn't get in trouble when I was on there. I did the podcast, right?
Because you're weak, dog.
Non-confrontational.
Because you got too many brand deals, bro. You're scared, bro. I got a Patreon. I don't need to be scared of
I got a
nothing, bro.
family, man. Let me
I'm Andrew
just-
Schultz and Dave Chappelle. You Kevin Hart, dog.
You feel me? 100%.
That's because Jeff walks in. He goes, first and foremost, I am a business coach. Please ask me coaching questions.
I could already feel
Theological.
Adam about to ask us some crazy stuff.
I feel it. I feel it.
no,
I feel it.
no.
But
I'm
the
not going there
podcast
yet.
space you were saying?
I'm not yet. I'm not there yet. We'll see. But that's what's that. You're going to be on good service. So,
Yep.
like, you guys come and chat on this one. We'll chat on this one. Like, what is your guys' experience right now in the podcast space? Like, that may seem like an odd question, but like, are
know where you're
you,
going with
you know what
this.
I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
what is your guys' experience, or like, how are you seeing podcasting interact? How are you seeing, like, with your own, maybe like professional development or your own aspect of development? Like, to me, it's become a very strong. I was just at lunch with a pastor today who's in his 50s, and he's like, Adam, I think I got to get into it for my church. Like, he's doing something, but he's like, I feel like I got to take it more serious and
Yeah.
help my church process. Like just the world's noise is like so loud, and I'm only getting so much accomplished on Sunday,
Right.
for 40 minutes. And so we walked that through and talked about that. For me, that's why I'm adding another show in September and stuff like that. But like, what are your guys' raw thoughts around that form of podcasting right now and what you're seeing?
I think when podcasts first started off, people were, trying to sound like they were the experts, starting to sound super deep, super heavy.
Yeah.
And I think now with podcasts, what's really blowing up is just the realness of conversations, stories, the truth of what's happening. And it becomes the new television, right? People are watching podcasts like you would have watched television back in the day. But I mean, when I'm looking at all the different types of podcasts that are out there, for me, the realer you are, the more that engagement is. And I think in a world where everything is fake and filtered, some of the stuff that people say and watching that, like, dang, I don't even know how did they say that? How did that come out? Where did that come from? And so just becoming so thought-provoking. And I just think it's a real, the more organic your podcast is, I'm finding out the more people are willing to share real talk. And I think just through that natural conversation, you get gems and jewels that just get dropped that get people thinking like, oh, shoot. And then those go viral. Not the one where the cats try to sound deep and then they pause.
Yeah. The
Right.
one you think is going to get
Yeah, they
clipped.
talk all like,
yeah.
and I
And they're like, don't clip that. Nah, that's bad.
Like, yeah. Like, I just, just think about that. And you're like, bro, you didn't even say anything. Like, dog, what you pausing for emphasis for, So
Yeah. Or they
think
go
for me
like,
it's been there.
you know, I have a life motto that I live by. And, you know,
What is your life producing that I want to follow? You know, and so yeah. But I think that for me, it's been really refreshing to be able to see that, and on that YouTube, looking at okay, who's saying what's the pulse, and you're going to podcasts to really catch the pulse of like what's happening. So it's been really refreshing. Even more so, even on our podcast, I realized that like certain people that on our Bros to Men podcast, you get the ones who are trolling. It's crazy because the ones who are trolling are the ones who claim to be the Christians, but they giving the most hate when you talking this. So it's interesting to see all the different dynamics. But the more authentic you are, I think,
for sure,
the more it grows.
I like it because I feel like it's a safe space to process. And I think, like, obviously we're here in one of the GOAT podcast rooms, you know, starting a third one. And what I love about this one, not to compare it to others, but I think a lot that succeed is the camaraderie, the relationship, the community, bringing on guests. And I feel like it really is a place to be unfiltered, as well as you could come back on and you could say, hey, I said this a few weeks ago. I've actually processed it. I think this. And so I feel like there's a safe space with that. But then on the other side with podcasts, it's like those who win just keep going, that they're consistent.
Yeah.
I feel like also sometimes people want to get in the podcast space because they just want to explode and blow up, and then they get over it in 6 months because they want to do it once a week, then it goes once a month, and then they stop it. And I feel like the consistency to be able to do that and to process it and really talk about real things. And like you just said it, 25, 40 minutes, however long your service is not enough to be able to share thoughts and educate and even talking through what the world's going through. So a podcast space allows you to talk about those things. And so to me, I love it, you know, and I love to be able to create these spaces, having fun with it, creating joy, but then at the same time being able to talk about some real things and not being afraid to talk about certain topics where maybe on a platform you're not going to have the space to process the whole thought.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't only listen to podcasts now. I don't listen to sermons. I don't listen to TED Talks. I don't listen to. I don't even care about your talks. I want to hear how you think. So for me, I'm listening to podcasts 5 days a week. Like not like just doing them. I'm doing the dishes. I got Flagrant on, right? I'm doing the dishes. I got Joe Rogan. I'm folding the laundry. I got Beyond the Letter on. So I feel like that's just the frequency of the communication that's happening in our generations. I love it, bro.
And then I think too, it's like take advantage of the time. So like we know that podcasting for right now, for however long it's going to be, will be trending in a good way. But then really being able to realize the time as it shifts and to say, okay, now the Lord is breathing on that, or there's influence on that. Let's occupy this space and let's really bring out these thoughts. And so that's what I love about here and other spaces. Again, I haven't been on, you know, Ben and, you know, their podcast yet, which I'm going to be on. But I just love that space to be able to communicate in that way and just be able to be like, nothing's off topic, and to be able to share. Last thing I'll say too is it's a space to be like, hey, these are my thoughts. I could be wrong. And to really be able to say, like, instead of, like you said, a lot of people want to have that like solo one camera on them and just talk the whole time, have a monologue. That's great. Yeah. That's fine. But you're probably not going to get many guests when you're able to say, hey, this is my journey. This is where I'm at. My thoughts might change, but being able to submit them to people to be able to hear and listen and process them themselves. Yeah.
No, that's dope. Like me and you and I were texting a couple of weeks ago in the sense that like you and I did this episode that I don't know if Alex, because we have our post editor, so I don't know what he leaves in and doesn't. It's up to his, whether he feels like the conversation moves forward or not. So you and I did an episode not too long ago, and it was more so about reflections of a leader, and I kept saying consistently, because you'd ask me a question and I'd be like, I'll answer it if anyone's interested. But while we were having it, though I was in the conversation, you were in the conversation, I had kept feeling like this might just go over people's head, and this might be one of our worst listened to ones in terms of it just being pretty dry in the sense of how leaders process and, experience insecurity and all these things like that. And then I tripped out because I had dozens of pastors hit me up like,
I had homies I didn't even know they listened
to our conversation.
and
I was like,
wow.
But wait, we didn't even like. I don't even always, just because I'm busy in the day, like I don't always reshare the episode for the week or share what it's going to be about or what. So it's like I'm talking to Will and I'm like, what I'm tripping out the most was like, these guys literally went out their way to see what that episode was about.
Yeah.
It looked interesting probably by the title or whatever the team titled it. And then they're like, I'm going to listen to it. And then they listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I had about 7 guys. Will's telling me he's got guys, and they're all like, I'm just getting messages like, thank you for this conversation. This was so great. It gave me comfort. And I was just like, and I was laughing because I kept saying,
what did we talk about again? I had to rewatch it. We talked about that. Adam was, I rewatched it too, dog.
Because I couldn't remember. All I remembered I kept saying was, I mean, if anyone cares, I'll answer it. If anyone's, like, or if I felt like I've said this before, I'll say it again, And it turned out to be, for me, one of our best feedback podcasts in the sense of people that are in our own field, other pastors and stuff like that. So I was just like.
But think about how different it is where you said, instead of being like, you have to hear this, apply this to your life. You're like, hey, if you want to hear it. And then I think people lean in. Yeah. Because you're coming at it in a place where you're saying, hey, it's okay if this doesn't relate to you, but if this is helpful, let me give it to you. And that there's a humility in to be able to communicate like that versus coming at it like an expert. It's coming at it like a learner, really.
Yeah.
Like someone who really wants to continue to do that.
And I even read like the comments after, and it was just a lot of people like, wow, it's so nice to see another side of our pastor, or other people saying like, wow, I saw how much weight a leader has. It's crazy. I never thought about it that way. And it was just, for me, to me, what has stood out most about podcasting is you cannot manipulate a good conversation. Yeah. Good conversation is just good conversation, and medium conversation is just medium conversation, and bad conversation is just conversation. Because any time I've ever gone into something with podcasting, I've gone like, okay, I want to make a great episode. And then I walk away and I go like, well, it wasn't really a great episode. And then days that I just go, man, I'm just going to give myself to the moment, just be present, let the conversation go, whether I'm thinking of an audience or not. Like, let's just have it. And those tend to be the ones that I'm getting hit up the most of, like, how good. But on a Sunday, you could somewhat manipulate a good sermon.
I got the CCC.
Yeah, you got the 3 points. And so, like, even if it's bad, you can still, by the end, make it pretty good.
Right.
Where with this, like, it's
beyond the letter, I just checked. It was almost like 50K subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah, on YouTube. Yeah.
That's great. I feel like podcast, though, also has the ability, what podcast has done is it has become the enemy to cancel culture, right? Where you were so quick to cancel somebody. If you put the wrong clip up, then all of a sudden people are so quick to get offensive and be offended by it. Whereas when you're on a podcast, they understand this is a place for intelligent conversations. And so I think with all of the podcasts that are coming out and the wild statements, it's giving people the ability to go, okay, you know what? Somebody has a different thought. And it's really, I feel like it's personally like, it's coming up against cancel culture, because if you say something that could get you canceled, that's the thing that actually gets your podcast on the map, you know what I'm saying? Right, but it leads that into where it's like, now you want to cancel me, but somebody else is going to promote me because of what's being said. So it's you see this dichotomy going against cancel culture, and I think that's so dope, being able to see that.
I mean, for me, bro, it's almost to the point where I'm like, maybe I should quit pastoring and just go full-time podcasting. I've said that so many times. Because of you, dog.
You for that Tim Ross
if I ever quit ministry,
it's
you and Andy.
All our beloved was like, no.
I was just talking about this. I'll talk to my wife. I'm like, man, I look at how Tim Ross he didn't just bounce. The Lord let him out. But I was like, he looks like he's living life.
Yeah, having fun.
He's having fun. I was like, that sounds great. I was like, maybe we do this a few more years and I'm going to just go full-time podcasting. Like, that's how much authenticity podcast has allowed me to be as a pastor. Because as a pastor, so much of my job is performing. Even though I don't want to perform, I got to deliver a message. So much of my job is strategic decision making, problem solving, moving the ball forward. But podcasting
development,
leadership development, is raising money, is budgeting, is hiring, firing, positioning, staffing. But podcast is like, yo, what's up, dog?
Yeah.
What's that? What we talking about today?
It starts with this. Man, so I was
thinking about something.
I was in the car today, and this came to my mind. And what do you guys think about that?
And I get like 10,000 reshares. And then my sermon, I worked on it for 20 weeks, and it's like 5 views.
exactly.
So it's crazy. So for me, it's almost to the point where I feel like podcasting has created an avenue for me to express a little more of who I actually am. Versus pastoring, sometimes I have to, change a little myself to fit the mold,
Do you feel like some of the stuff that you guys, like being pastors, do you feel like maybe if you're looking at the podcast and you're recognizing, like, dang, I'm recognizing when I talk like this or I'm bringing this in, I'm getting more views and more engagement, whereas if I'm preaching, I'm only getting 5. Do you ever look at it and say, okay, is there some of the things that I'm doing in my podcast that I can bring over into my preaching, or is that something that's got to be completely separate based on what you guys do?
Yeah. I've thought about it. No, honestly, because it's here's the difference. Okay, so what we do, because for those that are new to our show in this podcast, my background is digital marketing and media.
Right.
So this is what I had done for a living for many people. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have an expertise in digital content that has massive amount of money backed by my experience. And a lot of very influential people I've produced shows for. So I say that to say I step into this podcast somewhat, not the conversation, but the way that it is distributed. Yeah. I step into it as an expert. Mm. And so the team has been developed and trained in a way that I know it worked. Now, we could all say nothing good and it's not going to go anywhere. So, part of it also is having, people that think well. That's part of the gig in podcasting. Because people could have something nice to say, but if you don't know how to process thought well and deliver thought well, or engage, because I've had guests on before who are introverts and they just don't want to talk, and so you're just sitting there and you're trying to pull and you're trying to pull and you're trying to pull, but they may be a great preacher or a great this. They're just not a good podcaster. So that number one, you need that. You need someone who can one time I had someone on and I think the team ended up cutting an episode, but the person was like, yeah, I don't want to go into the long story. I'll just make it short. And I go, please don't make it short. It's a podcast. Tell the story. So it's that process. It does take a certain level of thought when you're doing long form podcasting. And then the team has been developed in a way that when we share content, we splice the conversation for controversy. So when Will gets clipped or someone gets clipped, the more than likely 7 out of 10 times, the clip that's being shared, that person didn't share that statement in one succinct thought. Andy and the team is cutting it in a way where there's a hook in the beginning of it. Mm-hmm. The thought is probably controversial in society, and then there's some type of elevated thought and how that person's processing it. So it's just it's
we should just start saying the most out of pocket stuff for 15 minutes.
Yeah, theoretically you could, right?
You guys are all wrong. You're like, what?
Yeah. So you theoretically could, and so there is a dynamic, and I'm saying that because I'm gonna go somewhere. Is so you want quality to be good. Mm-hmm. So, and obviously we're not at the top of our league, but our audio quality is good, better than someone who's just doing it by themselves.
Right.
Our video, we got 7 cameras in here. Our video quality is really good for YouTube and other stuff like that. And so your quality has to be good. Your frequency of both the episode and your posting. So right now we've already started growing our audience because our team went from posting 3 days a week a month ago to now 7 days a week. And already the followers have already started coming in and the views have started coming in even more. Because the idea is, let's just say 1 of every 8 videos gets traction. Well, if it takes you 4 weeks to get 8 videos out, then that means potentially only 1 a month is going to get traction. Wow. But now, if we're doing 7 a week, but between our 2 podcasts, Beyond I Do and Beyond the Letter, we're doing 14 videos a week posting. So that means more than likely once a week we're having a video hit some type of virality, which then for us, we use it as a front door to faith. That's our regular conversation. So I say that to say there is a certain rhythm that we have with this on how we're cutting, how we're approaching it, that I have processed that I don't have an intention to take that into a sermon. You know, like I don't want to be, so to say, because the platform of preaching the word is not a way to, it's not a front door. That is the door that we learn more of who Jesus is. And so I would never want to take the sermon. I could take this out of context a little bit to create a little bit of juice and conversation. I wouldn't want to take and now other pastors, they do take their sermons and they do manipulate it that way. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just personally don't feel comfortable. Like, let's just say if I said like in a sermon, like, and that's why you keep finding yourself in the same dump, blah, 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 blah. And they clip that and then they make it in a way that, which is what you would supposed to do, but make it in a way that I'm not grace giving or I'm like hellfire and damnation. Yeah, that could, like, I could take Will's sermon clips. I could take any of your guys' sermon clips.
Yeah.
And I can make them.
Sure.
But is that what you want? That's what you have to ask. And I haven't gotten to a place where that's what I want. It's just for the sermon, just clip my tangible thought. Just clip the sentence the way it is and use that for our church community. Right. Use that for when people are searching our church and they want to know what our teaching is like and they want to know how we preach and they want to know how we engage the congregation. I use social media for a church as a website. I use the podcast as a newspaper. You know,
it's good.
So to me, they're two different mediums that I'm trying to, one I'm trying to anchor, the other one I'm trying to attract. You know, one is bait, the other is food. You know, so it's like, so I have to distinctively, because if I merge them all together and all that kind of stuff like that, we'll start having people come to church for us, but they'll be coming for the wrong things. You know, and that's not what I particularly want.
Man, clip that right there.
So I say it to say I think about it a lot.
That's a clip.
I think about it a lot. It's you know,
it's free consulting right there.
That's right.
For everybody who's thinking leadership decisions. I think what's different too is scaling something growing online is, from my experience, so much easier than scaling a growth of a church. Because something growing online, same people could keep leading the same thing. Maybe hire a few more editors and stuff. But when you grow by the hundreds to thousands of people coming to church, that's a whole nother level of exhaustion and thinking and people manpower. So I feel like, yes, it's just two different worlds. I feel like when you do something purely for an online audience, you want to reach as many people as possible, and you don't really care how fast or slow it goes. That's how I see it. I don't want my church to grow too fast.
Right.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm not ready for that. So, like, right now, we're already too many people, so I'm like, let's just chill. Let's just chill.
No more people through the doors.
Because I don't want my church, I don't want my church to be bigger than what I can steward. Right? So if God sends me 1,000 people, but I don't have the infrastructure to steward 1,000 people, it's not going to go well. But if my clips reach 5 million people, we good.
But do you think that your clips, though, because they're going viral the way they are, isn't that just a byproduct? They're going to want to know where you at, where can I go?
That's happened a lot. We have a lot of people come to my church because of clips. Like, it happens every week now, which is new. It's a new experience.
Yeah. So, I didn't realize I just went viral this week. Nancy just said,
let's go.
I didn't even accept the collaboration.
Hey, take that.
That's a fathering one.
Hey, tell him, take that, Will.
Nancy just
Will
texted me. She's like, you just went
Adam
viral this week, too. But it goes to the premise of frequency. I didn't even know. I have one with, you know.
I'm going to look at it right now, dog.
Hey, look, I just glanced over on his phone, and I watched my man had like 200 new followers, like on his phone, like it's a big old huge, like
1.5 million views or something. I didn't even accept the collaboration.
So you didn't get any of the traction, bro.
You can accept it now, though. Accept it
now that it's at 1.5.
I can do it now. But that, I mean, to me, that's how you keep...
Put me in the collab, too.
Just add me.
We ain't even in the podcast.
That's cool.
Collab me on Will's stuff and Will on my stuff from here on out, so we can...
Just add me in all of it, even though I'm like...
Not even on the
once
podcast.
a year. Yeah, we're just here.
Yeah, just add us.
Yeah.
Add us, man.
It's interesting, bro. It's a different space. And because we're pastoring and your podcast, I mean, I'm writing what you're building with this. But it's been a fun experience.
But yeah, it's interesting, the value add. Podcasting is a little different than social media in some ways, but because normally if someone listens to a podcast, if they listen to more than 3, then they value your thoughts on stuff, right? Yeah. So because it's the form is audio, even though we have video, but the form is audio. We're not necessarily we're not providing an art form to people. We're providing an intellectual dialogue, which is pretty uncommon in society as a whole. But those who listen to podcasts, it's said those that listen to podcasts are higher on an intellectual plane, and they tend to act more towards success in life if they listen to podcasts because it is such an intellectual endeavor to listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
And I say that to say because this podcasting is slightly different, whereas social media, even though we use this term influencer, you're actually not an influencer if you have a large following on social media or if you go viral or something like that. What it means is potentially you have an audience that's building off of a certain concept of you, but it is not you. When I was working, I've done a lot of work for Pray.com, and I was early with the founding team and stuff like that. And what happened is there was another kind of faith app, and and you might know some of this, Sammy, too. But there was another faith app, and Justin Bieber shared the app on his social media account, and because we're in the tech space, we're able to gather everybody's analytics on like how many people click someone else's page and all that kind of stuff like that. There are softwares that are sold to people in the tech industry where we can see what our competitors are getting traction on. Well, Justin Bieber has, I don't know how many followers on Instagram, 100 million followers, right? When he posted this app about faith, guess how many people clicked the link? Take a guess. He's got 100 million followers.
It's not going to be that many, huh?
How many people click the link?
At least a mil?
No, I would say a few hundred.
I'd say 2.
300.
Yep.
300 people?
Yeah.
300 people downloaded
No,
the app.
300 people or 300,000?
300 people.
300.
300 people.
Downloaded the app.
It's just because
Click the link to
Download it.
download the app.
just because people are posting about it with a large following doesn't mean their audience wants what they post, not like a one-off a lot of times.
Well, they're
But does that mean
part
that
of
they're not influential? Like, is that...
He's not an influencer in faith.
Right, exactly.
And so the idea of like, oh, I have
That
a
makes sense.
following
That
or I
makes
have
sense.
virality or I have influence. No, where do you have influence?
Yep.
Where do you have authority?
Yeah.
almost?
Yeah.
What are
So
you known for?
for Bieber, you know, I'm not speaking to his faith. I'm not speaking to anything like that. And I don't know him. I don't know anything. But by definition,
I was
historically,
about to make an inappropriate joke.
Yeah,
The spirit
yeah.
guy, the spirit guy reframed my mouth.
silenced you. The Holy Spirit was like,
Shaka baba.
yeah. Grabbed your lips. But for all intents and purposes, he is not a model of faith. You know, he has had very public lifestyle indiscretions and other stuff like that, and I'm not putting any judgment on it. That is perception that people can see. He has dabbled in faith, and God bless if any people have come to faith from as he's been vocal
Right.
about his relationship with Jesus. But overall, when you say define Justin Bieber, you define him as singer,
Yeah, artist. Yeah.
artist, married to Hailey Bieber. You would probably, for average culture, it would take a while before you get to the point where he's a Christian.
So would you
right?
say
And
that
it's
his
in faith.
influence is in if he did a music app?
But yeah, potentially.
Oh, yeah,
He maybe
probably blow
have
up.
10 million downloads, right?
Because he's 200. I just checked right now. 293 million followers.
Yeah, quarter of a bill. And back then it was probably 150 million or something like that. And he the day he posted it, he had 300 downloads on it. And what that shows is, and we had to use that in market analysis because then it had to be, you had to be very decisive then. You could have someone with 10,000 followers, but be defined by faith.
And
Talk
have
about
a
something
thousand
of faith,
people downloading
and 1,000 people could download
Exactly.
it because it really has nothing to do with virality or size. It has to do with authority. It has to do with what are you cautioned as a person who has authority in a particular area, because that more than likely is what you can use to gain exposure for whatever it is you're trying to do. So whether it is financially or whether it's just through influence. So this concept of influencers today is a little bit debilitating because and brands are getting smarter on it because they've spent a lot of money on people just with a lot of followers. But now what's really big is this conversation of brand fit. Like that's why we're getting chased right now by a company that deals with a medicine that helps you think better, that has like ashwagandha and stuff like that, because they've recognized we're a podcast all about thinking, thought, like really going in. So they're like, hey, we want to potentially see if we're a brand fit because you guys are thinkers, kind of philosophers, and our brand helps people think. It's like a natural medicine. And so it's like, are we a brand fit? Would you have authority in things that improve mental thinking? And that's then what you go back and forth on, whether you are or aren't,
for sure.
or not.
I have a question for you, because you're, obviously this is your podcast. I mean, the team, everyone's here. I'm always reoccurring. How much time do you think you're putting towards the podcast per week? Like just
including our team?
Including you, and then I'm just curious, like, because obviously you're recording.
Yeah, so I'm individually probably putting maybe 5 to 7 hours a week.
Okay, every week.
Towards it, every week.
And you're allocating your whole staff to also throw in that much time.
So I probably have 6 or so team members that are probably each giving maybe 3 to 7 hours themselves a week, maybe each of them. So that's between cutting clips, posting clips, being here for the recording, creating timestamps, editing, all that other kind of stuff in between. I would happily commit even triple time to that if it was necessary, with as much fruit as we've seen from it. Right now, 1 in every 3rd person that visits our church or joins our church reference one of these podcasts, Beyond I Do or Beyond the Letter, in some way, shape, or form. There's a guy who flew from Arizona 3 weeks ago. His family's from here. He flew just because he's going through a divorce and has been watching Beyond I Do, and he just wanted to meet me in person and say thank you, because he wouldn't have got it through his divorce without this podcast.
Wow.
Now, obviously, it's all the Lord in it and all that kind of stuff like that, but that was the tool that was used, and I saw him right away, and I was like, how do I know you? And he was like, well, I came here when I was a kid. I'm in my late 20s now. I've lived in Arizona for the past 12 years or whatever, and I don't go to church. He listed all these things, and he said, but October, I started going through a divorce. I came across your podcast, and Mom and Dad live out here, and I thought it was a perfect opportunity to come visit Mom and Dad and just come and say thank you. And so, I've been preaching for a long time, and I've never had anyone fly out of state just to say thank you. I've been preaching 6 times as long as I've been podcasting, and I'm posting sermon clips and other material and stuff like that, and never have gotten something to that degree. And that is just one person of many of those things that I've heard right now, and like how one of these podcasts has impacted a person's life and got their life closer to God, because that's the only reason why I'm doing this. If the fruit of this one on the other side was not that someone would find faith in Jesus, develop a relation with Jesus, lose that chip on their shoulder, bring them closer to God, bring them closer to grace, then I wouldn't do this. And this is a form of mission for our church.
Yeah, it's good.
This is a missionary endeavor.
And then your team is not only working for the podcast. They were in multiple hats doing multiple things, and this is a part of what they do, right?
Yeah. So I could go through it really briefly. So Gabe's here. He actually is one of our children's pastors. So he runs in our children's. What I did was I took individuals that I believed not only had belief in maybe belief in me, because that's what it would take to ask them to sacrifice and commit to do this, because it was all theory at the time. So I did find people on our team that I felt they believed in me as a leader doing something like this. I also had to find people that I believed that no one knew how to do this except for me. And so I had to find people also on the team who I believed had the aptitude and hunger to learn. Now now most of them could tell you more about this than I could, because they've been living it in every day. Yeah. But on the front end, we would have these team meetings, all of us in a circle, and we'd be in one of the college rooms, and and I'm running through it. We got to post this, and when we launch this thing, this is what the play is going to be. And now they've given 100% into it. And so Nancy's my executive assistant. She was head of our social. So now she does most of the timestamps and stuff like that. Andy, who's here, he does all of the social media cutting, the actual cutting. Alize, who pops in from time to time, she does the posting. What's that?
Photos, yeah.
She does photos and the pictures for the thumbnails, does the posting on the back end. Alex, who comes in and adjusts the cameras and the lights, he actually edits the podcast. And so Alize is on our social team. Nancy's on my team. Alex is in our media team. Who else comes? Gabe's on Kids. Andy's with Jermaine and Creative. So we built like this little Avengers team. So that's why when I tell, like, if pastors say like, well, my media team couldn't do it, and I'm like, my media team couldn't do it either.
Sure.
Yeah. They weren't, because they take too much of their expertise.
Right.
And they actually, I love them. I love our whole media team, but they actually would have kind of ruined this.
Yeah.
In the sense of they wouldn't have been able to get out of their structure on media of what it had to look like or sound like or do. And so I actually needed people who were very just like, yeah, I'll go listen to 100 hours of a podcast.
Let me ask one more question. This is more a leadership question. When you pioneer new things, do you always recruit a new team for that project, or do you bring with you the team that was with you for the previous things as well? As in, like, because you just said you had another media team, but you didn't bring them into this one. So your mind is...
Yeah, I have a whole staff of 3 other people that aren't working on this podcast.
So when you have a new vision, your mind goes to, you recruit new people.
Yeah. Most of the time. Probably 80% of the time.
Why is that?
Okay, so the best way I could framework it is, I forget what they're... I think they're called the Disrupt team. Apple has a team called the Disruptors. If I'm correct, I think that's their name. And it is a full-time staff of individuals who it is their job to embrace technology of their competitors, figure out why it's popular, and find out how Apple can apply it. And then it's their job, once they figure out what makes it special, as the disruptors, it's their job to then build a team to build the product to disrupt the industry with Apple's own feature of it. And so they don't assign, like, let's just say there's an apps version of the team at Apple. They don't say, hey guys, Samsung just came out with this. You as the apps team need to work on this. They actually assign it to the disruptors. The disruptors are taught not to have boundaries, they have every resource. They're allowed to embrace new technology. They're allowed to go to a conference that is outside of their own circle. Now, if someone else did it, it could look like they were poaching and they're looking for a new opportunity, a new job. But for them, it is their sole job to embrace whatever their competitors are doing better than them. And so it's this idea of it's a fresh team that always is building, they're always recruiting, that then helps the greater company implement these kind of ideas. So for me, what I found is when I heard that, I was like, man, I think that's what I do in ministry and in life in other companies is I like to build a team that has fresh eyes because I don't like most of the time, I'll be the authority on what a good boundary is. Not that I'm the final authority, but I have enough care for our traditions to decide what we can lose and what we can gain and stuff like that. And so if I give this to, normally I love young people, so I'm always recruiting the next generation of young people. So normally I love, like Jermaine, who's on our team. I first brought him on staff when he was 17.
That's awesome.
Andy, who's on our team, he first came on when he was 16. Alize, we gave her a chance when she was 19. Now she's running our social media whole team at 21. I love, like, young people. To me, they come in with fresh eyes. They're like a total nuisance in some ways. And to me, I love that they're like, they don't have the tact, but they have charisma and they're excited and they offend all of us people who are in our boxes. You know, Jermaine gets on my nerves, and sometimes, Alize does stuff that I'm not comfortable with, or Andy will cut a video that made me feel uncomfortable. And I got to look at it and be like, well, I wouldn't have did it that way, and then it goes viral, and I'm like, okay, he knew, like, so it's like they helped me come out of my comfort zone. And that
so
new
what do you
team,
do with the OG team that was working with you?
So they maintain status quo, essentially. So they will maintain the structures that be. So like right now, our media team, the ones that aren't working on this, they're working on Easter. They're working on Christmas. They're producing giving videos. They're producing videos about our generosity center. They're producing testimonial videos. I see what you're saying. And so
for the church,
I see what you're doing.
And what I'm doing with this, I was deciding, because at the end of the day, if I dedicated the media team to this, I would have to free up 8 hours each of their time. And if this didn't work out, then I'd be like,
takes away from what they're doing.
I might have to let go of,
right.
Like I might have to let go of some of them because now we don't, we built this out. Whereas everyone here if this didn't work out tomorrow, well, guess what? Gabe's given 8 extra hours to children's ministry, or probably 4. He probably gives 3 or 4. So it's like they can kind of go back to their divisions and we'll be okay.
That was what I was going to say when you first asked the question. Is like, because the podcasting is getting saturated, but then the ones who make it makes sense because you know what you're doing. Right, you have a leadership eye, you have entrepreneurial spirit, you have a staff, you have a team. Because anyone can start a podcast, and as many podcasts are starting, they're also closing out because no one's following them. So seeing this dude just talk for like 20 minutes, bang, 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 bang. It's not a viral bug; it's an intentional bug. This fool's thinking.
We don't fall into it.
You're methodically, strategically thinking through. How am I going to build something that's going to last and affect people, right? So it's not just plug and play. You're like, your brain and your team and your staff is building this.
And then that's when we were like, okay, time to do Beyond I Do. It's time to fragment.
And going on to the third, too.
And then September, we'll go on the third.
Something you said, a few minutes ago that I really liked, that I feel like just to highlight is, you said you found people for this space that will follow you versus follow the idea of what the podcast is going to be, because I bet from when you started to where it is now, it's evolved and changed, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I think what happens, and then the other thing you said where you're saying people sometimes when we get stuck in a role, and not even stuck, but just get comfortable, I'll say, in a role, then you ask them to do something else like, well, I don't have margin. Well, I'm guessing you probably don't have a ton of 5 to 7 hours in the week. You have a lot that is going on. If people don't know, which most people do, that Patria is not a small church. You have a lot of things, and that's not the only thing you do, but you created space and margin for it because you saw value in it. But then you pulled people where you're saying, hey, follow me, right, in this space, and let's learn together. And then the other thing you did was you gave these, whether young people, old people, whoever had space and margin, you gave them time to also develop and adapt into who they were. And then you talked about from the lighting to the video to the audio, you had that set, and then you set the culture, and then you said, let's just keep going, and let's keep running. And that, to me, again, is when you're sharing all this, I feel like some people are watching, and they're either started a podcast and then stopped, or maybe they want to start it, it gets overwhelming.
Or started a dream in general, like want to start a business.
Whatever it is,
whatever.
right?
Yeah.
And I think it's like, then they're like, well, how did you do it? You set it all in place. You realized it was going to take a lot, and then you were consistent with it. But you're like, hey, let's just press play for the next year, 2, 3 years, and let's turn around. Like you said, if it needs to shut down, then they could go back to their roles. But then I bet you that some of the guys and girls that came on here that are wearing 3 or 4 hats is maybe challenging others that are comfortable in their role, saying, wait, maybe there's some more space for me to jump and do something else. Yeah. And it's almost like inviting them into, like, you don't have to be an expert in it. You just have to be willing to learn and grow. And now these guys in a few years, they know more, like you said, than you.
Oh, they know more than I do. Now,
exactly. So to me, that's what I love, because I think a lot of people want to get in this space. Like you said, it is oversaturated, but if you got the right culture, if you got the right DNA, the right mix of ingredients, and you got the right people in the room, there's so many places it could go and it really explode in a good way.
And I've talked to pastors before, and they're just like, I feel like I have good ideas, or I feel like I have a good following. I think they'll like podcasting. And what I tend to share is like that's not going to be good enough to get traction on something. And so like for me, I try to never get involved in stuff that I don't understand. Mm-hmm. Like I have to be able to conceptually understand it. And if I can't...
So how long were you studying or like learning podcasts before you launched it? What would you say?
So, I mean, I've had a unique opportunity that I've produced a lot of podcasts. I produce a podcast for Nona Jones, who's what used to be at Facebook, now at YouVersion, head of partnerships. I produced for Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter. I produced for many real estate agents, one of which who's a top 50 in religion nowadays. And so I was an expert at this field in a lot of areas. Yeah. So I understand podcasting. Yeah. And so that's one thing right there. Like if I didn't understand it, I have 3 failed podcasts before this one. You can go look it up on Spotify. I have one called Dominion Creative that I started in 2008. Or not, Dominion Creative was my Dominion Creative was my...
That's just a crazy name, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Taking over.
When was it?
2018.
Yeah.
So 6-7 years ago. It was
a pre-COVID name. It's a pre-COVID name.
Yeah. Dominion Creative was my company. Dominion Podcast was was my podcast,
Yeah,
and it was Dominion Podcast with Adam Messa. Had my face on it, had me preaching, and it was a rough prerequisite to this one where I talked about interview people, talk to people, faith, stuff like that. It did pretty well. I probably had like 9 episodes, but I was looking at the numbers every week, and I was like, I approached it too systematically with not enough spirit. And I felt like I wanted it to be a success so bad that I felt like God was just like, yeah, you got to remove this. You got to stop. And so I was like, okay. So I stopped after like 9 episodes. And then during COVID, I came out with one with Ashley called Something Simple. It was a marriage one. And that might have only got 1 episode in the light of day. It had the logo and everything like that. It was dope. It was me and her picture drawn and all that kind of stuff like that. We had shirts. People even bought shirts ahead of time and stuff like that. And then her and I started talking about it, and I was just like, yeah, I don't think we're an authority on marriage right now. I just didn't feel like our relationship. I didn't really feel like, I felt like there were areas that I wanted her to improve on and I needed to improve on before we even actually like talk about marriage and actually offer some good thoughts. And so I felt like God didn't release me to do that with her. And so I had to tell her, hey, I don't think this is going to be for us right now. So she was actually hurt when I started Beyond the Letter because she thought that we were going to do a marriage thing. And then I started this with my brother. And so she thought I was choosing my brother over her.
Interesting.
And I just had to explain to her that I knew that the day was going to come. I just didn't feel released to do it with her on marriage. And Ashley processes really fast. So once we talked it and we got it through, she was good, you know. That's why she's not on Beyond the Letter much at the beginning, even period. And at the beginning, she didn't know how to conceptually get in with this conversation, and she didn't want to. And then when we saw that, finally, when I came to her and I was like, "Hey, it's time. We're gonna do a marriage spinoff." She was pumped about it because we had wanted to do it for 3 years. And so I have, and then I had one other one that just like didn't even see the light of day, but it had back end work. It was like more of a vlog style podcast / YouTube channel. That one was actually 2016 when I first started that one. I actually have unlinked vlogs, like actually linked vlogs on my YouTube channel that are vlogs that I did as a pastor and podcast since 2016, and I have them unlisted. Like they've never seen the light of day, you know?
We're going to have to show it on one of these episodes and just comment.
A little throwback.
Well, I thought what even be cool one day is like even going back at some of the episodes from the Dominion one and like processing because I have like 9 and we could like pull clips. So
cut a clip, listen to it, and be like, nah, I didn't. That's off, or no, that's still on.
So I have 3 times as much failure in this space as I do so far.
So
in
great
success,
to hear.
right?
Yeah.
So there's that big side of it as well that comes along with it. So I have experience, but for me now I just don't get into stuff that I don't understand. So I don't need, like some people think, I'll just find, like I need to find someone in my church who can do this. No, I did everything I could to understand this, and then I build the team for my weaknesses.
So good.
And so this is my strength. There's other things that are my weaknesses that my team helps me out with, but I can handle. This doesn't take, like you said, like this doesn't take a lot of mental hard work for me. I built this studio. I built this logo. I built all these cameras. I got these. I put the lenses in. I put them on the tripods. I built this desk with all of our software. Like I built this. I screwed all this stuff in. You know, like so. I know, and I'm not messing with stuff I don't know unless God tells me I need to do it. Then I'm going to go out and be a learner. And
you're going to learn.
And if I still can't understand it, then I go, God, that's not for me.
Right.
I did everything I could to get it. I don't get it. I don't know how to do it. And then, so now our team comes and they take ownership of all of it. But I also think because they've seen how much I care about it too. You know, I care about this too. I'm not asking someone to do something that I haven't done first in this space, you know.
And I think the sacrifice it takes, like, you know what it means to cut a clip. You know what it means to set up a camera. All this different stuff. Where sometimes we ask people to do stuff that we don't know what we're asking them to do.
Yeah.
Do you know
what
I mean?
Just make me go viral.
Just do
like,
it.
what?
And you're like, it's not that easy. But you have the understanding of like what you're asking them to do. So you have the grace and patience with it. But then it's also like, I think you just said it. It's like when the Lord breathes on something, then you know you're going to walk in it. But just because God's saying, I want to invite you into it, doesn't take out the fact that we need to learn about that subject. I think sometimes it's like, oh, this is trending. I can talk good. Let me jump in this space, and not learning anything about it and really wondering, oh, my team failed me. No, you failed yourself because you didn't learn.
Yeah.
And
you're not passionate about what I asked them to be passionate about.
And you're not passionate about the details. Greatness is in the details. I remember my mentor, we were talking about him, passed away a few years ago. When he was first married early on, his wife came to him and said, hey, I see that you're not a man of great detail. And until you become a man of great detail and care about the detail, you won't be a great man. And this is like year 1 or 2 in. And he said he had the chance to shut it down, like us men know how we could be like, whatever, that's crazy. Yeah. But he said he took it, listened to it, and just started to be meticulous in detail. Mm-hmm. And as he was looking at the detail, not even just a day later, a week or a month, but over the months and even almost a year, his wife came back and said, hey, listen, I see that you've been paying attention to these details, and you're becoming a great man. Yeah.
Jeez.
And I just think there's there's just something in that where whenever we feel called from the Lord to do something, let's not just feel like we need to jump right into it. I think, Will, you said something a few minutes ago early on where you said, I'm not ready for my church to grow this fast. I want to carry a grace for the people God has for me. I don't want a vision larger than the grace God has called me to carry. Mm-hmm. And I think, to me, I feel like we might have a grace, but understanding the process of what it takes. Yeah. And so I just, again, I'm not an expert in the podcast space. That's you guys. I get to be on it, and I get to be inspired by it. Right. And it'll be so cool maybe to do one day, but not the pressure to do it. But it's just amazing to see what it takes and like the consistency and faithfulness of what it is.
I think what's interesting as you're sharing is like, because I'm always, I'm a student. So I'm like, even when I talk to Jeff, I'm like, yo, Jeff, I'm thinking about this. And I'm like, what should I do about this? Yeah. What I'm picking up is you're obsessive. Yeah. And I've started to identify the most successful people. Yeah. So they're obsessive. Mm-hmm. They're like, they see something and they're like, I am going to figure this out. Yeah. And I'm not going to stop until I figure out how this works. And I feel like that's an ingredient that I'm picking up from you. Because I was like, dang, dog, this is kind of intense. I thought we were going to ask you one question. And I was like, tell me more, dog.
You keep going into it.
Yeah, I'm like, yo, this is what it takes. Like, this is what it's like Kobe. Yeah. I woke up at 4 a.m. Everybody was at the club. And then they went to sleep. I was in my second practice. They woke up. I was in my third practice. You know what I mean? It's obsessiveness.
But I think the dope thing was when I was reading Tim Grover's book on winning, and Tim Grover was Michael Jordan's mental and like success coach, and so Michael didn't let anybody else use Tim Grover until he retired, and then he said, "Okay, Kobe, now you can use him." Right?
Straight up.
Straight up. That's what he said. He's like, "Yo, you can't use him."
That's crazy.
Tim Grover told this story where he was like, "Yo, it's real." Like that's how competitive Michael was. He was like, "Anything that's going to give me the competitive edge, I'm not going to allow anybody else to have it." So when he retired, and he knew he wasn't going to come back right after the Wizards, he was like, yo, go ahead and take him.
Because Kobe was already giving him buckets.
Right, 100%.
We're Kobe fans here, at least.
But, so.
Keep on. We don't want singular. Put that back to first.
Because he's with the Lord now, so none of us can bring.
I love you, Kobe.
But I'll say this. He tells this story when they used to go into the gym, and they would work out, and it'd be 3 o'clock in the morning, and Kobe would already be outside his car, and he would go and he would work out. They'd work out from like 4 to 7. And then Tim Grover would be like, yo, Kobe, like, okay, go home, take a rest, take a break, and then we'll come back in another few hours. That's how obsessive Kobe was. And so he said, but he had to stay and make sure Kobe left because Kobe would sneak back in after he left to go and work. And so in another interview, he asked the man, like, what gives you your competitive edge in the league? He said, oh, it's simple. He said, most of these guys came into the league so that they can get a bag, so that they can get the contract, so they can get the millions, so that they can get a house for their moms. And then after they got the house for their moms and after they got the bag, they just stopped wanting to
pull back the throttle.
Pull back. He goes, I came in this to be great. Yep. And if I came in here to be great, then that means that I'm pushing and I'm pushing forward to do something. I think that's what I love is knowing, in no matter what field you're in, I tell all of my coaching clients, you have to become a value-added proposition in life.
Yeah.
only reason why we buy anything, whether that's buy in or we purchase, is because we see it as valuable to us.
Yeah.
And when you talked about, I know we've been going in this conversation, but I've been stuck on that Justin Bieber tip where you were like, yo,
He's still,
like,
hold on.
yeah, hey, I've been stuck
Like,
here.
where's my authority? I gotta think about my authority.
Like, yeah, 100%. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, yo, my man is popular.
Yeah.
But just because you're popular doesn't mean that you're going to be influential in an area.
Yeah.
And so when I think about it, I'm processing all of these different things. It's you understanding. And even me, what's been the hardest thing is saying, man, if I'm not passionate about this, if this is not my magnificent obsession that I'm diving into, nobody has to encourage me to do it. Nobody has to incentivize me to do it. This is what I'm watching. This is what I'm reading. This is what I'm gleaning in on my own. Then you know that's an area that you're called to. So therefore, you're going to provide massive value in that area. And I think a lot of podcasters, speakers, they want to be influential in an area that is not your obsession. It's not an area that you care about. So therefore, when you're not a value-added proposition, that I can do without your podcast, I can do without your business, I can do without your service.
Yeah.
And so it's dialing in that obsession for you, and then staying in that sweet spot where you watch somebody who's dialed in on their special niche area become successful. You see people start trying to do that thing or imitate that podcast, but that's not the area that you provide value in based on your experience.
And it's crazy how we work. Like, we just assume if you're successful or influential at one thing that and we fall under the guys that we think that then that's like you're successful and influential in everything. Like, the amount of times I've seen like business people talking about marriage and their clip going viral, giving marriage advice, and then the next month they're divorced. And it's like, you know, like okay, they're a billionaire. Like, because they're a billionaire doesn't mean they know how to be married. Like, but I'll see in these conferences, they're like asking them things that aren't even, you know, this person's in real estate and we're asking them how they raise their kids. I don't know that they know. Like,
100%.
let's hear from the kids.
Where's
like,
that proof?
they're asking them how, we're
asking
asking them how they're like, oh, how does your marriage work? And they're like, oh, we're fantastic. And me and my wife, we're like this and we have a rule. And then, comes out that he has a girlfriend on the side.
Or these pastors who are giving like business tips.
Yeah.
It's like, you never ran a real business, dog.
And that's not your sweet spot.
That's not your
It's
sweet
like the
spot.
church is not a business, my friend.
it's
It's
not.
not. There may be some similarities, but you're running a nonprofit, totally different than someone who's running a for-profit.
Sometimes I have to remind myself I'm not a businessman. So I'm like, hey, this is how you run an organization. I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about, dog. I'm struggling with getting tithes and offering here, and I'm trying to tell this entrepreneur how to run your business.
How to scale,
So I have to remind myself, too, I'm limited.
It's like I can give you the biblical fundamentals that I think we're all striving for, but outside of that, my friend, like,
For sure.
it is out of my wheelhouse.
For sure.
You know?
And then even just knowing, like, for example, like regarding obsession, this past week, Andre and I were supposed to co-preach, right? We're supposed to co-preach, and we agreed upon this like a month ago. But when we were talking about it, I told her, I don't think it's going to work before, like, but then she was, oh, it's going to work. And everyone else on our staff was, oh, it'd be great with you guys up there. But once we started preparing our manuscript together, we just kept fighting. Because I have a level of obsession with preaching. Yeah. And she also forgot. I was like, we can't say it like that. If you say it like that, people are going to feel like, you got to say it like this. And she's like, who cares? I'm like, I care. I was like, I don't care if none of y'all care. I care. And then, this is how bad it got. I mean, I'm just being how blunt. I told her, I don't even care what our staff thinks if we should do it together or not. Because I know I'm right.
Humility at its finest.
I'm so honest.
Right,
And so we were preparing, and we just kept getting into fights. So because I'm just too obsessed. I am just way too obsessed with how I think things need to flow. So we ended up not co-preaching, but we still ended up going up together. And we said, hey, I do think the bigger win is our people seeing us up there. But when it comes to co-preaching, like, I don't know how yet to let some things go. So I said, how about we do this, honey? Let's get our boy Jimmy. He'll come up, and you have like 5 questions prepared, and let's answer it separately. So we did well. But my whole point, my wife even said, like, oh, you know what? I forgot Like you got issues.
Yeah.
And this is your world.
Yeah.
Like you know what you do.
Yeah.
And I apologize profusely. Like it's not that I don't believe. I so believe in you. But co-preaching is a different level that I need to learn more.
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
not there yet. I'm still not humble enough to let go in certain areas. But I realize I'm obsessed with that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
But man, I feel so bad for
We
myself.
co-preached, but you probably rebuked me, but you had it all written down in his notes. That's what
But
I
that was
saying.
different. We didn't
Yeah,
co-preach. I
like-
preached 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and then you preached 15 minutes.
What were you guys gonna do? Like just talk at the same time?
Boom,
Point one,
boom,
point two, point
boom.
three, point
I
four.
had a point.
Yeah.
She had a point.
Yeah.
I had a point. We had a co-story.
Mine and Ashley's first time doing that was pretty hard.
Yeah,
It's hard.
yeah.
Going 15-15 is relatively easy.
Yeah, you're just
Yeah.
kind of you're guest
But going
speaking
back
back
and
and
forth.
forth.
Yeah. Going
We
back
killed
and
that
forth.
one. We
is
killed
hard.
that one.
That was a good one. That was when we're like, COVID, it's fine. And then like 4 years later, it's like, hey, we're back. We're back.
Yeah. No, yeah. That letting go is like it's hard.
That's another
you know?
level of leadership. I think
Yeah.
knowing when to let go. Like
Yeah.
Craig Rochelle has this phrase. It says "Getmo." He says high level leaders have a good enough to move on. He said at a certain point, in order for you to do more in less time, your obsessiveness could actually become a hindrance. So he has this phrase called "good enough to move on," and he has like an access point.
Yep.
It's like level of excellence
Yeah.
on one side, and then time used. And he said, like, at a certain point, the first 2 hours, you're going to get a lot of improvement. But by hour 3 and 4, the return is not as good. So you got to learn as a leader, what is your good enough to move on. I'm still learning. Pastor Joel actually recently, Joel Holm,
Yeah.
like about a year ago at our Cottonwood retreat, he was like, what's the hardest about pastoring right now? I was like, I don't know what's the hardest, but I'll tell you what's the most tiring. I was like, it's actually my sermon prep. Like sermon prep drains me. I love preaching, but sermon prepping kills me. And he just looked at me and said, then don't prepare. And I thought he was joking, right? I started cracking up and I looked at his face. He was like, I'm not joking.
Yeah.
He's like, stop preparing so much.
Yeah.
Just move on.
Yeah.
Guru wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you apply that?
I did. Not with my wife, but on my own.
No, dude.
No,
but
it's a game changer.
No, yeah.
But what do you mean by that?
Oh, yeah.
When
As
you
in,
say
like,
I don't prepare.
No, I prepare, but once I hit a wall, I just move on now. In the past, I had a wall, but I gotta figure this out.
Yeah,
and I was-
over obsessing of it.
Yeah, and it's like, how much more is 2 hours gonna actually improve? I could use this other 2 hours somewhere else. This whole good enough to move on thing.
Yeah.
Do you wait when you say like I move on? Do you say okay, I hit a roadblock, I'll come back to it, or you're like, yo, I hit a roadblock, that's the end of my sermon, we gonna end it right there?
I just embrace that it might not be as good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just embrace
I've
it
de- yeah,
instead of killing
yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
Like die. I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with B. Even though I'm dying inside because I want the A+, I'm okay. But like,
Just get a base hit.
yeah, just get a
go.
base hit. Just get
Yeah.
on first base.
Joel Holm wrecked me once. It was like speaking of Joel, it was and we gotta bring him on the podcast one
Me
day.
too.
That
bro.
would be crazy.
He's always here. He's here like once a month training our pastors. He was here probably I can't remember what it was, maybe 3 years ago or something like that, and he was really like affirming our church and what we do well and stuff like that. And he's just like, Adam, you guys are. He's a missionary, so he's been international. He's been all over, and he was just like affirming me in a way in that I really wasn't comfortable, which was sharing our uniqueness. Man, you're unique. God has called you to minority communities, and you got to be ready for God's yes and all this kind of stuff like that. And because I was sharing how like, oh yeah, my dad's dream was to do like 5 campuses in 10 years or 10 campuses in 10 years or whatever, and I'm just trying to like see that what's possible and if we're even going to do that. And then he's like, are you limiting yourself? And I was like, limiting myself? 10 campuses is a lot. Like, no minority pastor in America has done more than 5, I think. So I was like, just that double alone is a big deal to be a minority church and even hit more than 4. So I was just like, well, I don't. And then he's like, and where would they be? I'm like, I don't know, like Southern California. He's like, well, I come from Chicago. Why wouldn't you have one in Chicago? And I was just like, so now like I start giving excuses because now I'm like, this is silly, like you're just Joel, stop, like we're not doing that. And so I'm just like, so now I think this is like an easy out. I just go like, Pastor Joel, to even be able to do that and find the leaders, that's going to take forever. So maybe it'll happen, but finding the leaders to do Chicago or do 30 or whatever, it'll take years to find those type of leaders. So it's just, if it happens, great. And he goes, who said anything about finding leaders? You don't find leaders, you build leaders. And just completely checked the daylights out of me. And he was like, who are you building right now?
Yep.
And I was like, oh.
That's silly.
Oh, I'm looking for him.
Yeah.
Like, looking for what?
Yeah.
What does a leader look like? You know, and then he totally just deconstructed my whole excuse on what that looks like. And what I realized in some areas, I was doing that. Like, I was doing that with some of these guys in creative, like Jermaine and Gabe and stuff like that. Like, it was in youth ministry or children's ministry, and I was, you know, really helping develop them and help them get good at what they're doing. But, you know, it was just like, he put it in the context of like, you could do that with pastors. You gotta build them, not find them. And I was like, I didn't. It's like it's one of those things that you have to sit on it because you have to be okay with like the ball being in your court. Where it's easy to obsess and control a sermon because the ball's in my court. It's not comfortable going, it's going to be a B. That's going to be okay. And then normally those turn out to be the actual home runs, the ones you feel like are B. But it's also like same way with a person. It's like you feel like you're supposed to be striking, Jeff's famous saying is talking about gold in a person. You know, it's like you think you're finding gold, but you could actually develop gold should the right characteristics be there and the person's heart be there and their hunger be there. It's like, you know, we can turn this into something, but then that means that's a lot on me as a leader. I want to just be able to send you off and be like, go get good at your thing and come back, and then maybe I'll recruit you. You know, it's like it's a lot different to be like, I'm going to take you through the good. I'm going to be with you through the good, bad, the ugly. The moment you fail, the moment you preach horribly, the moment you maybe go too far with your girlfriend and we got to come back and I got to discipline you, or maybe the time this or that. It's like that takes a lot. That's Jesus and his disciples. He's like, he's with them through the good, bad, and the ugly, right?
But I feel like you're really good at that, because I feel like the team that you built with us, not just because I work for you, but I'm going to say that even before, because even just I know we have several people on the team, but just the bare minimum to have this running to even record, it's just 2 of us and then you and a guest. So that's pretty decent to be able to produce as much as we do, is because of how sustainable you've built it to be, where you have multi-skilled people, where if Alize's not here, I can jump on the camera. If Gabe's not here, Andy can jump in and do both camera and direct. So I think it's like you're very intentional with, obviously you mentioned it before, with who you choose, but you care. And I think that's what makes the difference, when you really care about the people. And you can feel that, you can see that in your actions. So that's what makes the difference. And how you run it.
That's called receipts, bro. You got your receipts. Just pull it up right. Let me show my receipts.
I know, right? I'll Venmo her later. I text her.
Just do it right
now. You better say something right now.
Even if you fire me, I'd say the same thing.
I'll share the story, and I'd be curious what Jeff thinks, because he's in this world. My dad has a doctorate in like leadership management or something like that.
Oh wow!
And then he used to have a domain called kitchenleadership.com. I was like, you still have that? You could probably sell that for like $1 million. And I got rid of it years ago. But pretty much him and his brother and my grandfather started like some hardware kitchen stuff to help restaurants have the best equipment. But for his research, he went to like hundreds of different restaurants and interviewed like different chefs, different people working in the kitchen about, his goal was, I want to solve all kitchen problems. That was his goal. I want to make cooking in the kitchen and the kitchen culture, I want to solve every single problem there. And so he did
at a restaurant or in the home?
At restaurants. He wanted to figure out what are the biggest pressure points in every restaurant.
Yeah.
And he wanted to solve it. And his conclusion was leadership. That was a pretty boss answer, right? He was, I thought it was going to be the machines. I thought it was going to be this and that. He's like, it's leadership. You solve the leadership problem in the kitchen, the restaurant's going to be fine. So I'm picking up what I'm hearing is it's about leadership. It's about who's on the top leading this humbly, with competence, with humility, And so that's what I'm picking up. You know what I mean?
I think there's a big difference between there's leadership where you're leading people and saying, look, look at what I'm doing. But I think there's another term, makership. And when Christ came to the disciples, he says, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. And I think leadership is like, hey, I'm leading this way. Follow me. Do what I'm doing. And that's you walking like this, and they're following your lead. But when you're makership, you're turning around, and you're like, yo, you're not walking this fast. Let me show you how to step. Yo, you're not doing this. And so you're hands-on when you're dealing with makership. And then after you've dealt with those components of making that team, making that leadership, you understand that everybody wants to start off with leadership. But if you have a team that's immature or a team that doesn't know, they automatically assume if I can't step into that role of leadership or you're just following me, then something's wrong with the team. When all actuality, it may just be that they have it in them, but they haven't had somebody help make them. And that's where, whether it's marriage or anything else, I tell them, man, we want our spouses and we want our businesses to come already pre-assembled. And you don't read the fine print that says some assembly may be required. And for more people than none, I'll give a case in point. So everybody knows we have a donut franchise called Painted Dough. And so I get a
shameless plug.
Yeah,
if you're near
why didn't you bring
Chino,
any, dog?
He's brought him before. Dude, fire. Painted Dough if you're anywhere in SoCal.
Yeah, appreciate that, bro. You know what I'm saying? But hopefully that goes viral. You know what I'm saying? We'll say something about donuts right now, dog.
Say something eloquent about donuts that look like
if you're overweight, don't touch the.
Hey, but look. So I get done coaching. My business partner calls me and goes, Jeff, we got a problem. I said, what's up? He said, we about to lose our whole team. What you mean? Our lead cook said, like, yo, if we don't deal with this issue, these are our demands that we want to see. And if we don't see these demands, like, we're going to leave. And so he's looking at, he's like, man, we getting ready to scale. We got a whole franchise about to open up here in the next couple of months. We're on this thing, and we about to lose the whole entire team. I said, what do I tell them? I said, where are they at? He's like, they all want to hold a meeting in the next 10 minutes. Like, he's like freaking out. So I go
unionized.
Bro, 100% without a union. You know what I'm saying? So, bro, it was
different times, bro.
Dog, it was the cook. It was the cook, bro. The cook was like, yo, so I come into this meeting, they all sitting around, and I start having the conversation about what's the problem here. And it was interesting because as they were talking about it, they were like, man, there's a different system on how we can bring in tips. And I think, we can do even more in tips. And 90% of what we bring in as a company, 90% of our processing of how we pay for is through card. And we're missing the card side of the tips.
Oh, because they didn't have a POS system that asked
we
for
didn't
a tip?
have that, right?
Oh,
and
okay.
so it was easier to just continue with the cash and like, yo, we're going to distribute the cash. I don't understand why you guys are tripping. So if you come into it initially, you could be like, yo, you guys are trying to usurp authority. You're trying to do this, but being able to hear what was needed and hear their desire in that moment, we were able to say, you know what? Why aren't we doing this? Well, I don't know. It'd just be a little bit more. Well, does that cost you more? No, maybe a little bit more attention, but if we do this, it's going to produce a different outcome. And then as I begin to talk with them, you begin to see like, hey, this is where my heart is. Okay, so this person wasn't trying to be combative. Yeah. They understood the vision. They want to partner with the vision, but they didn't have the tools needed to help carry out that vision. And so makership comes into that area where you're like, okay, let me hear. So then I had to be, okay, that's great, but let me show you how you communicate that. You know what I'm saying? You don't throw a whole like tyranny. We about to usurp and take over.
It was a coup. It was a coup.
Right now.
Yeah, it was crazy.
You know what I'm saying? And my business partner like looking and he like, oh shoot, but by the time we're
they
done.
was getting ready to open an illustrated dough across the street.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
you needed that street smarts to come in. Let me help you out.
Bro, let me help you with that. But that was a moment of makership where I was able to say like, yo, this is how you were right in what you were saying, wrong in how you were saying it. And if it was focused only on leadership, I'd be like, well, you weren't leading.
And if it was an insecure leader, they wouldn't pushed out the truth, which was like, we probably could do that and invest a few $100s for new POS systems. Right. But instead, they could be so caught and offended that their power had been taken from 100%. Them that they would just immediately go, well, then go, or I'll just promote the person under you, and you can go, and we'll just and they don't. Yeah, and so then that's poor exhibition of a leader who doesn't know how to hear criticism or what's needed for the team to be healthy. Like, They don't know how to articulate that.
And if you listen through the ears of insecurity, you won't hear what they're really trying to say. Sure. You'll hear your insecurity say you're not good enough. They're going to do this based on some type of trauma that happened in the past. And that's dangerous when you deal with leadership and makership.
So true. I think getting somewhere like I love what Nancy shared with you and what you're talking about, where she just said, hey, even if I was let go, I would still say the same thing. Because I think a lot of times we look at people as just like bodies and numbers to get us to our dream and our passion. Yeah. And if we get to that place while burning our team, we haven't succeeded, we've actually failed. And I think that we're looking at a space and a time where people want, again, this might be going back to our first kind of like initial, we're talking about the podcast space. People just love, again, to get behind the curtain to see, what do you think about? What do you feel? What are you processing? Getting stories about, your marriage, about our family, our successes and our failures. And so to me, I think that people are looking and leaning in for discipleship, leadership, but discipleship, and to be able to walk with someone. So like I was even thinking early days, doing circuit rider stuff where we went to universities and high schools, there's the Kobe mindset, right? That Mamba mentality of we're going to obsess over it. We're just going to go. But if we're just going alone, if you're saying I'm a leader and you're just walking, no one's following you, you're just taking a walk in the park, right? Yeah. No one's actually walking alongside of you. But having that obsessiveness, but then actually seeing people, hey, you want to come with me? Let's go on this journey together, and giving them access. I think what you shared, what was cool, is you let them, share their thoughts and concerns, and you're able to, almost cultivate and answer those thoughts and concerns with actually giving something successful moving on, versus saying, okay, we'll just fire you guys and get a whole new crop of people. And so to me, again, as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking, man, people want a space to be able to process and hear. And then even like you're talking about building this team, building these leaders, man, to build leaders, to build, to be a makership or to make people, it's giving them space and time to mold and to be created into it. And so to me, I think that's a cool space. And again, just even looking at this podcast space, very few people could get on our stages because there's actually things that you need. You got to, know what you're talking about, all this different stuff. On a podcast space, you can bring in so many different types of guests, and people could watch it and be like, man, I'm inspired to do that because I want to walk in what they're doing. And so to me, I just think that, again, we're going in this podcast space, this leader space, this, making people, it's just giving them margin to bringing people along with you, and to be able to see our real and raw side of who we are,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, you put someone on your platform, you're almost validating, nowadays, you're validating their life, their marriage, their character, their integrity. Whereas like somewhat like a podcast like that, it's really not as much. You could bring someone on and have a conversation and just
you
because you're not arguing with it.
You could completely disagree. You could be like, hey, I don't believe that, but tell me your thoughts.
Yeah. Or just let people, or just have that person space to share their opinion. Yeah. And then let the people who listen form their own opinion on how they feel about it. I had some friends from Israel come and share. People were DMing me like, well, would you talk to someone from Palestine? I'm like, yeah, sure.
Of course.
I didn't have them on because I affirm, even though I am pro-Israel, but I'm also pro-justice in what happens in Israel. But I'm like, I didn't have them on because I was affirming every opinion that they had. I had them on because I have a relationship with one of the individuals, and I wanted to create a space where no one's talking to people that really live over there.
100%.
So if there is someone from Palestine who wants to share, I'm more than happy to have that. Not a Palestinian who lives in Los Angeles.
Totally.
But like,
right.
Because someone DM me is like, I know a Palestinian. They're in Orange County, and I'm like, well, that's not. They're not in Palestine.
Yeah, we want to get their perspective.
I'm happy to hear it. Because that's this space that, whereas if I take it to a flat platform, I have to make sure
you hit every angle of it.
And my friends did want to share on a stage. They were like, let's have a Sunday night. And I told them like, no, it's not the right space. It's not the right space.
Smart.
And it's not like, let's do it in the podcast. And so, to me, that allows also enough conversation. I would say, hey, form your own judgment,
Yeah.
And come to your own conclusion on how you feel about something that's said or expressed. And just because I'm not correcting someone doesn't mean that I affirm. I go to lunch with my friends all the time, and I think, dude, what that guy just said was ludicrous.
Nonsense.
But I don't cut him off and be like, bro, that's garbage. That we may not have that relationship built up enough to do that. So therefore, I'm just gonna be like, in my head, I'm gonna be like, man, that's crazy. I can't,
that's crazy. Ashley, this fool.
I was at lunch with this fool, and he told me him and his wife,
You're like, no more lunches, only coffees with this guy from now on.
Exactly. Yeah. For real. So it's like it is a better space that you can express thought and share thought in a way that doesn't have to affirm every person's statement. Whereas any of our platforms, even my social media, like there have been times I've told the team, hey guys, take that off the social media because it doesn't represent us as a whole. That clip was real. The statement was true, but you needed to listen to an hour leading up to it to get to that point.
Yeah.
So then sometimes I'll tell them, hey, just take it down because it takes way too much context to understand that clip. So let's just reserve it for the podcast. And they're like, okay, yeah, for sure. Like they're all good about it. All right, y'all, my brothers.
Man.
Thank you for being on today.
Come on.
We're going to go celebrate Will's birthday today.
Go.
And Adam.
That's right. That's what I've been telling him, bro.
But I mean, it's true. Yeah, but it started off as Will's thing till he found out it was my birthday too.
Both these guys 1 day apart. Can you believe that?
That's crazy.
Greatness.
I was literally thinking, I was
1 day apart.
I did something for my birthday, my church community and friends, and then my wife, and I was like, honey, I want to hang out with the boys, like my homies, like my peers. Like we're friends, but we're also like,
we're running the same.
Yeah, we're running at the same pace in
yeah.
life. She's like, go do your thing.
Yeah, everybody's wives gave you the go ahead, so that's dope. Yeah. And Ashley, we just had a party for Matthias on Sunday at my house, and I was like, babe, you think we can have more people over on the 2 days later? She's like, yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
she's super chill about it.
Awesome.
So, all right, everybody, thanks for joining in to Beyond the Letter. If you have any, thoughts about what we said today, let us know in the comments or just tag us. Peace.
See ya.